A financial disaster is about to hit 70 million Americans, and nobody's talking about it. Boomers, the largest generation in U.S. history, are walking straight into a retirement crisis that no one warned them about. Over 50% have less than $100,000 saved. 43% have nothing at all. Healthcare costs are exploding. Rents are up 30%. And Social Security? It's about to get slashed by 23% within the next 8 years. And yet the system keeps pretending they're fine. This is not about bad planning. This is a collapse. And by the time you realize what's really happening, it might be too late to fix it. Here's what almost no one is talking about. Even if a boomer manages to retire with a modest nest egg, say, a couple $100,000 tucked into a 401k, the silent killer isn't groceries or rent, it's healthcare. A 2023 study from Fidelity estimated that a retired couple at 65 would need $315,000 to cover just healthcare costs in retirement. That's not including long-term care. That's not including dental, hearing aids, or vision correction, which, by the way, Medicare doesn't cover. Let me say that again. Medicare, the crown jewel of senior health coverage, won't help you if you need glasses, teeth, or hearing. So what are you really getting? Part A covers hospitals. Part B covers outpatient visits. But anything serious? You're footing a chunk of the bill. And then there's Part D prescription drugs. The costs are spiraling. From 1999 to 2020, the average price of insulin tripled. And that's just one medication. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, more than 50% of Medicare beneficiaries have 3 or more chronic conditions. That means prescriptions stack up fast. Then there's long-term care, the elephant in the room. The average annual cost of a private room in a nursing home is $108,000. The average boomer doesn't have $108,000 lying around every year to be immobilized in a bed. Medicaid only steps in when your assets have been drained down to poverty levels. And that's by design. We've built a system that bleeds retirees dry before it helps them. And boomers are walking right into the trap. One medical emergency can erase everything. And that's before we talk about inflation in medical services, which has far outpaced general inflation for decades. There's a healthcare cliff waiting. And the terrible truth is most boomers will fall right off it. But no one prepared them. Not their employers, not their financial advisors, and certainly not Washington. Boomers were told Medicare would be enough. It won't be. Not even close. Social Security will be there, but it's not enough. People keep saying Social Security will run out. That's not the most immediate problem. The trust fund is projected to be depleted by 2033, but even then, benefits won't vanish. They'll just get slashed by around 23%, according to the latest Social Security Board of Trustees report. But let me tell you what that means in real life. The average monthly Social Security check today is $1,846. Now, subtract 23%. That's $1,421 a month in 2023 dollars. Good luck paying rent, food, healthcare, and utilities on that. And yet, according to the National Institute on Retirement Security, 40% of boomers will rely entirely on Social Security for retirement income, not as a supplement, as their only income. That's a disaster in slow motion. And the worst part? These aren't people who were lazy or irresponsible. Many worked 40-plus years, contributed to payroll taxes, played by the rules. But the system changed around them. Real wages stagnated. Pensions disappeared. Housing became unaffordable. And now the one thing they were told they could count on Social Security is barely enough to survive. Rent alone, in most U.S. cities, exceeds $1,400 a month. That means food, utilities, medication? Forget it. And don't even think about aging in place. Many seniors will be forced into multi-generational housing or worse, homelessness. The fastest growing homeless population in the U.S. right now? Seniors over 60. In California, that number doubled in the last decade. People who never imagined they'd end up in a shelter now live in their cars. And still, no one is warning people how bad it's going to get. Politicians talk about saving Social Security, but don't mention that it was never designed to be your only source of retirement income. In 1935, it was meant to be a stopgap. Back then, people retired at 65 and died at 67. But boomers are living longer, some well into their 90s. That means 25 to 30 years on a fixed income that was never meant to last that long. No COLA, cost of living adjustment, will fix this. It's too late for tweaks. The damage is done. The rent crisis is hitting retirees like a freight train. You might think housing prices only hurt millennials trying to buy a home. But let's get something clear. Retirees who rent are being crushed right now, and it's only getting worse. According to the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies, nearly 11 million Americans over age 65 are renters, and that number has doubled since 2004. What changed? Well, a lot of boomers used to be homeowners, but job losses, medical debt, divorce, and 2008-era foreclosures wiped out tens of thousands of their properties. And guess what replaced it? Nothing. Just rent. Now they're stuck in a housing market where rent has risen by more than 25% nationally since 2020. In places like Phoenix and Tampa, that number's closer to 40%. Boomers on fixed incomes are seeing rent hikes of $200 to $400 per month with no legal cap in many states. They can't move, they've got no savings. They can't downsize, there's a shortage of senior housing and affordable units. And they sure as hell can't buy, they missed that train decades ago. In fact, a Zillow study found that 1 in 5 renters over 60 are severely rent-burdened, meaning they spend more than 50% of their income on housing. That's not sustainable. That's an eviction waiting to happen. And unlike younger people, retirees can't just pick up a second job or crash with roommates. Many have health issues. Some are caregivers themselves. They need stability. But instead, they're stuck in a game of rental roulette, just waiting for a landlord to raise the rent beyond what they can pay. Retirement communities? Sure, if you can shell out $4,000 per month for a room the size of a closet. Affordable housing wait lists? In some states, they're 10 years long. That's not a typo. The result? Seniors are couch surfing, living in trailers, dying alone in motels. A Washington Post investigation in 2022 showed that in Las Vegas, senior homelessness has increased 300% in the past 10 years. This is happening right now, and it's about to hit peak boomers like a hurricane. They weren't ready. Nobody told them renting in retirement was a death trap, but now they're trapped in a market that doesn't care and time is running out. They can't afford to move, but they can't afford to stay either. Most people think aging in place is the goal, right? Retire in your home, tend your garden, wave at your neighbors, and finally relax after decades of hard work. But for millions of boomers, that dream is a trap. Because here's the awful truth no one talks about. Millions of seniors are trapped in homes that are financially, physically, or geographically impossible to sustain, but they also can't afford to leave. Let's start with finances. According to Redfin, the average property tax bill in the U.S. rose more than 30% over the last 5 years, with some states like Texas and New Jersey experiencing even higher spikes. Utilities? Skyrocketing. Insurance premiums for homeowners over 65? Up 21% since 2020. Then you've got maintenance. The roof leaks. The furnace dies. The plumbing needs work. It's endless and expensive. The average annual maintenance cost for a single-family home is now over $4,500, and that doesn't include emergency repairs. Now let's talk about the physical toll. Many boomers are still living in the same 2-story homes they raised their kids in. But stairs are a nightmare with bad knees. Doorways aren't wheelchair accessible. Bathrooms don't have safety rails. But renovating for accessibility? That'll run $10,000 to $50,000 depending on the house. So then people say, why don't they just downsize? Oh, really? Where? Into what? Affordable senior housing is booked out for years. Assisted living costs upwards of $4,500 per month, and even basic 55-plus communities are selling units at $350,000 and up. And many boomers can't even sell because they refinanced at ultra-low interest rates and now face mortgage rates at 7% or higher. If they sell, they lose their low rate and jump into a more expensive rental or downsized mortgage with higher monthly payments. That's why we're seeing an explosion of what experts call house-poor seniors. People sitting on homes they technically own, but who live with little or no cash flow, unable to cover basic needs without selling their home, and unable to sell without making their situation worse. So they stay, isolated, trapped, unable to afford the costs of staying, and unable to afford the costs of leaving. It's a terrifying stalemate, and no one warned them. Their kids are broke, too. So the safety net is gone. Here's where it gets even darker. In past generations, if a retiree hit hard times, there was always the fallback, your adult children. You'd move in with them, or they'd help pay your bills. Maybe they'd even take you in when you got sick. But that safety net, it's gone, obliterated. Because many of today's adult children, Gen X, millennials, and even some older Gen Z, are just as broke, if not worse off, than their boomer parents. And boomers didn't see this coming. They assumed the next generation would be climbing the economic ladder like they did. But the ladder's broken. Let's look at the data. The Fed's 2024 Household Economic Well-Being Report found that 63% of Americans under 40 say they couldn't cover an unexpected $400 emergency without borrowing or selling something. Meanwhile, student loan debt has exploded past $1.7 trillion, with the average borrower in their 30s owing over $40,000. And homeownership? Forget it. Only 38% of millennials own homes, compared to 52% of boomers at the same age. This means adult children can't help their aging parents because they're too busy trying to survive themselves. Worse, in many families, it's the boomer who's still helping the kid. A 2023 AARP report revealed that over half of U.S. parents age 55 plus are still financially supporting adult children. That's right. The retiree is paying the grown kid's rent, phone bill, or even student loans, while trying to live off Social Security and a dwindling IRA. Some are even co-signing mortgages and credit cards, putting their own financial futures on the line just to help their children stay afloat. So when the boomer hits a health crisis, when they lose their ability to drive, shop, or cook, there's no one there. The kids are too broke or too busy or too far away, working 70-hour weeks to make ends meet. What we've got is a generational house of cards. Boomers assumed there'd be a soft landing, but they didn't realize the entire bottom layer was collapsing under their feet. The myth of family as a fallback? It doesn't hold up in an economy where everyone is stretched to their limit. The jobs boomers plan to work in retirement? They're disappearing. Everyone says the same thing now. I'll just work longer. And boomers? They believed that. They planned for it. They told themselves they'd retire later than their parents. Stay active, pick up part-time work, maybe Uber a few hours a week, stock shelves at a local store, consult, teach. Sounds reasonable until it doesn't. Because the jobs boomers plan to work in retirement, they're vanishing. Or worse, they still exist, but they won't hire people over 60. Let's get one thing straight. Age discrimination is real. A 2023 AARP study found that nearly 80% of older workers say they've either seen or experienced ageism on the job. Employers claim they value experience, but when push comes to shove, they'll hire a 25-year-old at half the price with zero benefits. And if you're over 60 and get laid off, the average time it takes to find a new job is twice as long as for younger workers. Meanwhile, the pandemic reshaped the labor market. Many of the easy retiree jobs, greeters, retail clerks, even gig driving were replaced by automation, kiosk checkouts, or AI systems. And customer service jobs? You're now expected to do 5 roles for minimum wage while being yelled at by customers and tracked by software. Not exactly golden years material. And let's not forget health. Working longer assumes your body holds up. But nearly half of Americans over 60 have arthritis. 1 in 4 has hearing loss. And over 60% of retirees say they left the workforce earlier than planned, not because they wanted to, but because of health issues, caregiving responsibilities, or job loss. So this just keep working strategy? It's a fantasy. It might work for the top 5%, the lawyers, the consultants, the online influencers, but for the average boomer, it's a gamble. And the odds are stacked against them. We've told an entire generation they can just delay retirement to fix the problem, but we never fixed the job market to support that plan. And now, the clock's run out. Their bodies are breaking down faster than the system can handle. People love to say 70 is the new 50. But for millions of boomers, that's a lie wrapped in Botox and denial. Behind all the wellness trends and glossy retirement magazine covers, the data is brutal. Boomers are aging into disability faster than any generation in modern history, and the healthcare and caregiving systems are completely unprepared to catch them. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be over 65. But here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Millions of them will be too sick to care for themselves, and they'll have no one to help. A 2024 CDC report found that more than 38% of adults age 65 plus report difficulty walking, climbing stairs, or performing daily tasks like bathing and cooking. That's not just about arthritis or bad hips. It's the slow creep of chronic illness, heart disease, diabetes, cognitive decline. Nearly 7 million Americans already have dementia. Most of them boomers, and the Alzheimer's Association expects that number to hit 13 million by 2050. Think about that. 13 million Americans slowly forgetting who they are while the cost of memory care facilities hovers around $6,935 a month. Who's going to pay for that? And don't say Medicaid. It only kicks in once you've drained almost all your assets. Even home-based care is unaffordable for most. In-home health aides cost over $30 an hour, and many states face massive labor shortages in the caregiving industry. Boomers are aging in place, yes, but with no railings, no supervision, and no backup plan. And family caregiving? That's a ticking time bomb. AARP reports that more than 40 million unpaid family caregivers, mostly women, are already stretched thin. And the average caregiver is now 49 years old, sandwiched between raising their own kids and managing a parent with increasing health needs. Burnout is exploding. Suicides among seniors are rising. Falls are now the leading cause of injury-related death among people 65 and older. These are not edge cases. This is the new normal. We built a society where people are living longer, but we never built the infrastructure to support that longevity. And now, the cracks are turning into chasms, and boomers are the ones falling in. Inflation is slowly erasing what little they have left. If you want to know what quiet financial desperation looks like, just watch a retiree walk into the grocery store in 2026. They know exactly what everything used to cost. A dozen eggs used to be $1.50. Now, over $4 in some states. But this isn't just sticker shock, it's a slow-motion robbery. And it's hitting boomers harder than any other group. Why? Because most of them are on fixed incomes. When your Social Security check is the same every month, or your 401k distributions are shrinking, you feel every single price hike. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, inflation has eroded more than 20% of the dollar's value since 2020. And while the CPI may be leveling off in official reports, the reality on the ground is brutal. Rents haven't gone down. Healthcare hasn't gone down. Food hasn't gone down. And retirees are getting squeezed from all directions. In fact, AARP found that nearly 60% of Americans over 60 are now cutting back on essentials. We're talking groceries, prescriptions, utilities, just to stretch their income, not luxuries. Essentials. Want to hear something worse? Most retirement calculators are still using 2% inflation assumptions, but actual seniors have been facing 5 to 7% inflation for multiple years in a row. That means a retiree who thought their savings would last 20 years might be out of money in 12. And because many of them are drawing down principal instead of living off investment returns, every withdrawal hurts more. The moment the market dips, they panic. They sell low. They lock in losses, and the spiral gets worse. Meanwhile, the cost of property taxes, homeowners insurance, and even Medicare Part B premiums keep marching up. One survey by the Senior Citizens League found that 73% of retirees said recent inflation had devastated their financial plans. And you know what's terrifying? We're not even in hyperinflation. This is just regular inflation. If the economy gets hit with another shock, another energy crisis, a global conflict, a climate disaster, the cost of living could explode again, and there will be no buffer left for millions of boomers. Their safety margins are gone. Their financial advisors never accounted for this. And the system built to protect them? It's pretending everything is fine. But they know the truth. Every trip to the checkout line is a reminder that the dollar is dying faster than they are. The American retirement system is broken not because people made bad choices, but because it was never built to handle this many retirees living this long with this little support. We're talking about a structural failure decades in the making. Start with the math. By 2030, more than 73 million Americans will be over 65. That's 1 in 5 people. Never before in U.S. history has such a massive cohort left the workforce at once. And yet, the infrastructure, the benefits, the funding, all of it was modeled on 1950s assumptions, when the average life expectancy was 68 and most retirees didn't live long enough to collect a pension, let alone spend 25+ years in retirement. But boomers? Their living longer life expectancy for a 65-year-old today is about 84. That means we're now expecting a retirement system designed to fund 5 to 7 years of post-work life, to cover 2 decades or more. It's madness. The very programs meant to sustain seniors like Social Security and Medicare weren't structured to handle the boomer bulge. In 1950, there were 16 workers for every Social Security recipient. Today, that number is less than 3. And as boomers retire en masse, it's projected to drop closer to 2. The result? Massive strain on government programs, slower COLA adjustments, tighter restrictions, and mounting calls for reform, which really means cutbacks. Meanwhile, traditional pensions have all but vanished. In 1983, 62% of private sector workers had access to a defined benefit pension. In 2023, just 15%. Instead, boomers were pushed into 401s, Ks, and IRAs, programs that shift the burden of investing, saving, and risk management onto the individual. But here's the kicker. The average 401k balance for 65-year-olds today is just $194,000, and that's skewed by wealthier savers. Median balances are far lower. That's barely enough to live on for 5 to 7 years, let alone 2 decades. Boomers were sold the illusion of control, but given none of the tools, training, or income security previous generations had. This isn't about individual failures. It's about a generational promise that was quietly broken. The system isn't collapsing because boomers failed it. It's collapsing because it was never built to survive them. The illusion of prosperity hid the coming collapse. Let's be honest, boomers were told they were the luckiest generation in American history, and in some ways they were. Born into the post-war boom, raised on dreams of white picket fences and steady paychecks, they came of age in an economy where a single income could buy a house, raise a family, and still afford a vacation. And that illusion of prosperity? It never really went away. It lingered, like a nostalgic haze, well into the 2000s. Boomers assumed they'd retire like their parents, with a pension, a paid-off house, and a sense of peace. But underneath that Norman Rockwell painting was a fault line. And now, in 2026, it's cracking wide open. What most people never realized is that much of the wealth boomers accumulated was paper wealth stocks, home equity, retirement projections that looked solid but were highly sensitive to market cycles. The housing crash of 2008 wiped out trillions. Many never recovered. Then came the low interest rate trap. Retirees were told to move their money to safe investments bonds, CDs, annuities only to earn 1 to 2% returns, which couldn't keep up with inflation. On top of that, financial literacy rates among boomers are shockingly low. A 2022 study by the TIAA Institute found that only 12% of Americans age 60+ could correctly answer 10 basic financial questions on inflation, compounding, and risk. Meanwhile, predatory industries, reverse mortgages, high-fee annuities, crypto scams target older Americans aggressively. The FBI reported $3.1 billion in elder fraud losses in 2022 alone, a 500% increase over the previous decade. But perhaps the cruelest part of all? Many boomers still don't know how bad it really is. They're clinging to outdated expectations, that Medicare will cover everything, that Social Security is rock solid, that working a few extra years will be enough. But the numbers don't lie, and the illusion is fading. We're entering an era where millions of older Americans will be downwardly mobile for the first time in their lives. They won't retire with dignity. They'll survive. Barely. Maybe. They'll sell the family home, move in with kids, skip prescriptions, delay surgeries, cut meals in half. This isn't the retirement they were promised. It's not even a retirement. It's a slow, quiet collapse of the American dream, and no one warned them in time. Not the media, not the government, not even the financial planners. The worst part? This was preventable. But now, it's too late, and it's already happening. This isn't a future problem, it's already happening. Right now, millions of boomers are slipping into poverty, working past 70, skipping meals, drowning in medical debt, or dying alone in homes they can no longer afford. They did everything right. They worked, they paid in, they followed the rules. And yet, no one warned them that the rules had changed. The system is breaking in slow motion, and the rest of the country is pretending not to see it. So here's the question. If this is what's happening to boomers, what do you think is waiting for you? If you've got parents, grandparents, or if you plan to retire someday, then this story is your story. Let me know in the comments how this crisis is affecting your family. And if you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because more people need to hear the truth. The collapse has already begun. The only question is, are you ready?